Martians have come to take our women. They are armed with unimaginable weapons of mass destruction and ray guns. Be advised to stay in your houses and make no sudden moves. If you should happen to approach one of these Martian men, do not attack. They are said to have strange powers of the mind that can influence our very thoughts. We do not know who is in cahoots with the Martians, so be wary of thy neighbor. And so...
I cannot hold it together. This is actually packed. I was playing a joke. There are no Martians. But that would be crazy, right? Tonight's tale reminds me of those old radio dramas where the aliens tried to take over the Earth. It is called Where Were You When the World Died? By MONTSHO Shelby.
Gale put her frets off to wood. She tuned out the world. She stayed in hers and let reality stay in its own. She listened to her music, cranking it up so high in her cockpit that it drowned out her thoughts. But that was the point. Her thoughts was what got her in trouble, because she had a bad brain. The more she thought about things, the more things went dark. She had been out of the nut house for 6 months, and she wasn't going back again. So when she got this logging job, she did not overthink it. She took it as a gift and left it at that. The sounds of techno-punk rattled her console and put stress on the windows, but she was oblivious to it. Being numb was better than losing it completely. Her mech saw attacked the base of the tree that was as thick as a modest home. It was a redwood that rocketed up to the sky, tall as skyscrapers. When her saw slacked, she knew she was at the halfway mark. She was at a crucial juncture. Her machine nimbly stepped over to the safe side, the side that the tree was not likely to fall, and she continued. The saw vibrated so fast it was nearly translucent when it passed through the other side of the ancient tree. Gale moved her arm, and Sucker Punch mimicked her movements. She pushed the thing down, guiding it to a more favorable landing spot. The mech was at least 10 tons and 50 feet high, so the force it generated was quite impressive. If she managed to step in front of the tree as it collapsed, she'd give it a 50-50 chance she could catch it. The tree thundered down to the ground. Gale silently rejoiced at her work. It gave her an imperceptible little dopamine hit anytime one went down. Not great enough to give her that heroin high, but just enough to keep a razor from her wrist. She moved Sucker Punch to the down titan of wood and put her fret saw to work. She hacked the down thing like she were dismembering a giant. She put one foot on the massive log for leverage and passed a rapidly vibrating blade down through it. A hit from nearly 100 years ago played. Dig up her bones from the Misfits. Gale lamented that she was never born in that time, and if she had her pick, she knew exactly when it would be, 1970. So she could see the birth of some of the older punk bands, but live her teenage years in the 80s. She never truly thought she belonged to it, and that was the reason she had to stay in the nut house. As she attempted to put her saw into the tree from the other side, she felt resistance in Sucker Punch. She turned slightly and saw in her window another mech nearly on top of her, holding her arm. She reflexively elbowed it and the thing blocked, just barely. Her fret saw was still in her hand, inches away from causing the other unit damage. In the small window, she could see Manu yelling mutely from the hull of the Arak. Gale turned down the music and looked at her console, which was lit up like a Christmas tree. The warning indicators were blinking with urgency, and her comms were screaming their digital lungs out. Gale touched the console. "Yeah?" she said. "The fuck you mean, yeah? I've been calling you for 20 minutes. I thought you were dead under a tree," said Manu, the small little Indian woman. "Oh yeah, sorry," Gale said. "And what the fuck was up with you swinging on me? What if I hadn't been looking and you cut into my hull?" Manu went on. "I'm sorry," said Gale. "You had something to tell me?" she said, cutting off Manu before she continued her tirade about all the things she should be doing. "Yeah, you got mail," she said. Gale nodded, and so too did Sucker Punch. "Okay," Gale said as she made her way back to base camp. Sucker Punch was slightly more nimble than most mechs of its size, and Gale thought it handled like a man on stilts that bounced like a gazelle. She had a top speed of about 50 miles per hour, but she moved at a fairly unsafe 15 miles per hour amongst these trees that served as an obstacle course for Sucker Punch. When she got to base, there were 4 mechs parked there: the Ark, the Pistol, Groot, and Axe. The compressors fired off and the shocks relaxed as Sucker Punch kneeled into a squatting position as if relieving itself out in the woods. There was a picturesque view of San Francisco in the distance that they could see from their altitude. She popped out of the bottom hatch like a turd and dropped down because Sucker Punch's ramp had been destroyed and never fixed. As she walked towards the small building nestled on top the overlook, she heard a voice coming from up high. She looked up. Atop the Ark was Gideon, a shirtless 20-something man with a bottle of Johnny Walker Black, gazing in awe at the city in repose. "Manu thought you were dead." "Well, I'm not." "Whoopee for us," he said with a smile. Gale kept walking. "Don't be an asshole," Gideon yelled down. "When you stop being a dick," she shot back. Gale entered base camp and she saw 3 other loggers, presumably on break. There was a monitor from no less than 20 years ago affixed to a wall, along with a beat-up couch and a few battle-scarred lazy boy chairs that could double for garbage. The 3 were watching whatever broadcast was showing with some measure of interest, much more than they usually did. Gale ignored them, because it was just easier that way. If she got too into whatever it was, she had the chance to get too into whatever it was, and from a mental health perspective, that wasn't a sound idea. Her mail was just sitting on a table next to an ancient computer. Her name was on it in big letters that Manu probably put on them just to assure she didn't conveniently forget to pick it up. Gale could see the handwriting on the side. It was either from her mother or her sister. Both of them had gotten accustomed to sending her letters when she did her stint in the sanatorium. She gripped the letter as if it were hope, but she looked around quickly so that no one else saw her caring too much, lest it break her persona of being an aloof asshole. She ripped the letter from the side and let the note fall out. As she read the letter, she heard her coworkers getting more and more agitated at whatever it was they were watching. Gale took the letter and walked outside. Gideon was now sitting on top of his rig drinking. She turned her back to him and faced the San Francisco skyline while she read. The letter was mostly mundane. It spoke of a new hobby her mom, Janet, had picked up, something called virtual sightseeing. She said her sister may be going away on a trip for business. She didn't mean to throw it in her face that her sister was doing better at life than her, but anytime she mentioned her, it always felt like that was what she was doing. As much as Gale tried to ignore what it felt like, it sat with her like a festering wound. Towards the end of her letter, she mentioned something about her sister, who was a lesbian and a career woman not going to be the one to have children, and she was her only hope of that. Gale shook the letter and a ring tumbled out onto the ground. Gale kneeled down and saw it was 3 precious stones enclasped by abstract metallic hands. She told her that. Before she could finish her sentence, Gale saw the sky darken ominously, and very quickly, streams of orange light broke the veil of the clouds and dropped like falling stars. It took all but a second before the city was bathed in a ball of light like an overexposed picture, then a bubble of brilliant orange, then a mushroom cloud of black. "Fuck!" Gideon yelled in anger, horror, and disbelief. Her coworkers ran from the base camp outside seconds before the detonation. Gale howled with rage. Her emotions trumped her stoicism as her tears flowed uncontrollably. A tear hit the last sentence of the letter and smudged it. Gale looked at her mother's last words before they were lost forever. "You have to be the one that carries on the family," she said.